and just sobbing. A horror story that packed quite a punch. Maybe creating my TBR for December. This one was hard. There were 4 times. I feel like Miles and I would be BFFs. Hey y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we're going to be doing the Fave of Faves book tag. All right, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below and tell me in the comments, what is your favorite book that has a trope you hate? All right, so this is a tag, but it's also a collab. This was spearheaded by Becky over at BeckX Books. I'll have a link to her in the description down below, as well as in the cards. I've been following her forever. Love her stuff. Please go give her a follow. So this is the Fave of Faves book tag. We're going to be talking about some of my favorite books. And some of these questions were really hard, I'm not going to lie to you. Starting at the top, first up is the favorite book of this year. And I gotta say, I don't think it's really changed since I filmed my mid-year book freakout tag, because that book is still just hanging out in my head. Walking Practice by Dolky Min. This short little horror sci-fi story was so weird, but it's been just hanging out in my brain and I can't stop thinking about it. The writing style of it was just so memorable for me. We're following this alien who has crash landed on Earth and catfishes humans before feeding on them. But the way this story was done and how we were able to utilize this alien's body and relationships and place in the world to analyze different experiences of queer people or people who fall outside the gender binary or people who are disabled was just so interesting. I really loved how it was done. But like the prose itself also just fit so perfectly with this story in a way that really made it a full experience. Plus there was little art pieces done in the book that I really enjoyed. Like I said, this is a book that I can't get out of my head. I need to get my hands on a physical copy because I think it's one I would love to go back through, reread, and just like really dissect and annotate apart. Might need to put this on my Christmas list. Next question. Favorite book from 5 years ago. Given the fact I was on booktube, I kind of had something that really helped me figure out, what was my favorite book of 5 years ago. Went and checked out my best books of 2021, and it was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Certainly a book that draws out a lot of emotion. We're following Wallace, who's this guy that is not particularly likable, and unfortunately one day finds himself at his own funeral, and then at this tea shop kind of at the crossroads between life and death. He's given a week to kind of try to figure out how to live the life he always wanted to, and finally maybe find some actual happiness for himself. I just remember this book was like perfect for me at the time. It's actually one of his that I have not had a huge draw to go and reread, if I'm being honest. So I think this is a great example of like perfect book, perfect time. But this author also really knows how to produce emotions out of his readers. He will make you laugh, he will make you cry. And I definitely remember doing both of those things while reading the story. And the relationship that evolves between Wallace and the owner of this tea shop is a very sweet one. Honestly, talking about it now is kind of making me want to go reread it. Next question. Favorite book under 300 pages. Honestly, I looked at my shelves and I was like, okay, what's like the skinniest book that I own that I really loved? And it was This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau, a horror story that packed quite a punch. We're following this woman who has a very unhealthy relationship with her mother, but after her father's passing, she agrees to go on this vacation with her mom to try and maybe build this relationship back up. But our main character, Sylvie, definitely has her work cut out for her with her mom. I think it is really impressive, given how short this book was, how the author was able to weave in some really heavy and complicated dynamics and relationships and themes into the story and kind of explore those. But at the same time, there is this creeping feeling, this unsettlingness, and just this horrific thing that grows in the story. It was so well done. Another one that I definitely need to get around to rereading because I loved this when I read it. Next question. Favorite standalone. This one was hard. I don't know why. This was like really hard for me. Even now, I don't necessarily, this is one of those questions that like, I feel like my answer would probably change based on the day, but I gotta go with A Man Called Ova by Frederick Bachman. The memory I associate with this is always going to be listening to the audiobook while I was walking my dog first thing in the morning, and I'm finishing it and just sobbing. Thank God I was wearing sunglasses. Neighbors would have thought I was a crazy person, but it was so good. I love this like curmudgeonly old man who ends up bonding with his annoying but well-meaning neighbors, and then slowly kind of becomes more and more involved with the people in his area, starts to become a real pillar of his community. And I adored this. The different relationships he's develops, the way you get to learn more about his backstory and see why he is this curmudgeonly old guy, but how some of these neighbors are able to like pull him out of this rut that he's in. And the setup of the story is so sad initially, and then it becomes so happy and sweet, but does end in a way that, like I said, had me sobbing on a morning walk. Still so good though. I really enjoyed the Tom Hanks version of this movie. I think Tom Hanks was absolutely perfect for the role, and now I want to go rewatch that movie. Another one that I definitely want to go back in and reread this sometime because it was just so good. Basically, this tag is maybe creating my TBR for December, which is my reread month. That might be what's happening here. Next question. Favorite 4+ book series that you've completed? I went back and forth on this one, but it feels appropriate for me to say the Charlie Davidson series by Dorinda Jones starts off with First Grave on the Right. I have reread this series 3 or 4 times. This series is 13 books long, though granted, the books are not particularly long. Majority of them are under 350 pages. I adore these books, read them in high school for the first time, and they were actually the series that got me like back into reading in high school. And then when I went to college, I reread them, and that got me back into reading in college. So this series follows Charlie Davidson, who is the Grim Reaper, but also a PI. And about every book has both a normal contemporary investigation as well as some sort of paranormal one. But at the same time, starting the series, Charlie also has some like paranormal spider senses that keep going off for this mysterious apparition of this very sexy man who keeps appearing to her in her dreams. And she's unsure what he wants with her and who he is. The series is full of fun mysteries. It's got some really great action, super amazing found family. Also, tons of spice. There's about 1 spicy scene per book, so it's a really good time. This series has been a favorite of mine since I was 16. I made numerous people in my life read it because I love this series. I couldn't pick anything else. Next up is actually the question I asked you guys. So a favorite book with a trope you hated. I just love this question. And I realized Funny Story actually works for this by Emily Henry, because technically speaking, these two do sort of fake date. Fake dating is not for me. A lot of the time, I just feel like the conflicts in fake dating stories are so predictable, and they always fall into the same traps, and it drives me crazy every single time. But I think the fact that like the fake dating isn't the main thing that really connects the two characters here for a majority of the story definitely helped. So this follows Daphne, who unfortunately is dumped by her fiance Peter for Peter's female best friend who was dating Miles. And so afterwards, Daphne and Miles end up actually becoming roommates together. And then when they find out that Peter and his ex are now getting married and sends an invite to the two of them, they decide they're going to fake date for this wedding. Like I said, the fake dating doesn't overtake the plot, which I think is part of why this went so well for me. But I also just love the importance of Daphne really finding herself after her breakup and kind of reestablishing her own identity outside of a romantic relationship was something I personally really loved. That's something I'm a big proponent of. Getting to see that done here was great. But at the same time, I did adore the romance she has with Miles. Miles is such a fun male main character. He's not my favorite book boyfriend, I will say, but I feel like Miles and I would be BFFs. Definitely also has some serious opposites attract. And then also just like everything about Daphne's job seems like my dream. So yeah, there's so much about this book that I loved. Another one that I definitely need to go through and reread it. Probably don't need to annotate it again. Next question. Favorite book with an unappealing cover? Oh, I forgot to grab one for this. The problem is like I am a little bit of a cover snob. If I don't really like the cover, chances are I probably won't buy the book, or like I'll buy a specific edition of a cover that I do like. I guess I could say this one. I feel like I'm kind of cheating. I would say Mayfly by CJ Lead. This is definitely an unappealing cover, but that's also what I like about it. So Mayfly is a feminine take on American Psycho. Personally, I liked this much more than American Psycho, as we follow Mayfly, who works at the happiest place on earth as a princess, but in her downtime spends her days ruining people's lives. However, when her best friend's brother comes to town to stay with them, she slowly starts to bond with Gideon and maybe find some real connection for the first time in her life. Like I said, it's an unappealing cover, but it matches with the entire story. So I don't not like it. It's just not particularly pretty, but I did really love the story. I really enjoyed the analysis around unlikable female characters in this. Maeve is not likable. I wouldn't say I really root for her, but she's just like disgustingly fascinating. She 1000% is not like other girls and is going to tell you all about it. And even with that, there was always just something about her that kept me coming back for more, and obviously made me very invested in this like relationship that she starts to develop with Gideon. There is a scene in this very similar to American Psycho that will live rent-free in my head forever. Next question. Favorite book with less than a 3.5 star average rating? This one I was unsure about, and I gotta say, I'm actually very surprised to see how low the average rating for this book was. The Death I Gave Him by MX Liu. Personally, I really liked this. It's a queer sci-fi retelling of Hamlet that's a locked room murder mystery story. And just the way it was done was perfect for me. I really loved this. I actually had a advanced reader copy of it and absolutely devoured it. I loved watching the descent of Hayden's character, the complicated relationships he has with some of the people in the building, his uncle, his ex-girlfriend, his AI best friend. I did not see the romance that ended up happening in this book coming, but I actually really loved what Liu ended up doing with it. And then as far as like the Hamlet and mystery angle of the story goes, I mean, I know Hamlet, so like obviously I knew how the book was going to close out, but I was still pleasantly surprised at the twist this book ended up taking. So I gotta go with this one because again, I'm shocked that it had such a low rating, but personally, I really loved it. Then we have a favorite book that starts with the same letter as your first name. Fun fact, not a lot of books start with N's, but I will say Night Pitch by Rachel Yoder was one that pleasantly surprised me. I read this for my feminist reading blog earlier this year. Was it earlier this year? Or was it last year? I don't know. I'll put a link to the blog up above. But this is following a stay-at-home mom who believes she is turning into a dog. That was like all I knew about the book going in. The writing style itself seems like something that would not have been to my taste, but I actually really ended up enjoying it. It is sort of horrific, but it feels very literary. And I just loved watching this woman sort of descend into some temporary madness because again, she believes she's turning into a dog. But watching her find herself again and reestablish an identity for herself outside of being a wife and a caregiver. There were a lot of quotes within this about women and our place in society and how we are viewed, how our positions are questioned, whether it's a mom that works or whether it's a mom that stays home, the ongoing competition that always is created between women. Like there was so much about this book I really liked. And I just did not expect any of that to really come off of the base story of like a woman who thought she was turning into a dog. And last question, which is the hardest question. Favorite book of all time? I hate this question. I always hate this question because I feel like it literally depends who's asking me, where are they asking me, like what's happening in my life when they ask me this question, because I have so many different answers. But I kind of just stared at my shelves and debated and was like, okay, what do I think it is right now in this moment? And maybe it's because I had this book displayed, maybe because of some of the other books I just listed for you. But the one that came to mind first and foremost was Unlikable Female Characters by Anna Bogochskaya. This is a nonfiction book that talks about the women pop culture wants you to hate. And it's broken down into different character archetypes that are very common in media and kind of breaking those down and seeing how that identity was created in media and how it is deconstructed. It was really fascinating analyzing like the way people respond to those archetypes and then how those may have shifted based on people's responses, the kind of breaking down of them and altering them in more recent pieces of media as we get to see more interesting unlikable characters. And getting more and more of these characters allows more nuance to be explored and really helps people to become more empathetic towards one another. This was another one I also read for a feminist reading blog. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago now. I had a lot of fun also making that blog. So put a link to that one in the cards up above. Personally, I love analyzing how we impact media and then how media impacts us. I support women's rights and I support women's wrongs. Like this book definitely explores some of the interesting elements of women's wrongs. And so that's officially it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave a blue heart emoji down in the comments. I've got links to all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you. Bye.